Right, so welcome everyone. My name is Marta Sikorska. I'm from Poland, and I'll be hosting one of this year's Learning Wild events. And I will be the host of this meeting tonight. And yeah, I would love you to meet, I don't know how to call you, our speakers, our guests, my friends, my colleagues. That's how I choose to call you. And this is Katarina Lundgren on here. She's waving her hand. Emily Keyson in the car in the sunlight. Bonny Mealand with her books, and Lovisa Cullheim with the bear behind her. I would maybe we will start with introductions. Guys, how do you feel? Katarina, would you be willing to start and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Katarina Lundgren. I live in Sweden, but I travel a lot, so not always here. I am the director of MiMer Centre, and my main topics are horses and humans, and horses and humans in any kind of combination. And also stress and trauma is some of my nerdy favorite topics. So this is what I do. I facilitate, I train people, I educate, I take people to learning wild experiences and so forth.
Thank you. Emily, would you be next?
Oh, I turned off my video. Okay. I'm trying to unmute myself and I end up turning off my video. I'm Emily Keyson. I'm a research director at MiMer Centre. I actively do research on horses and humans, and develop and teach courses in a variety of ways and places, including MiMer, and also sort of take part in these wonderful learning wild experiences to help people sort of understand horses in context and a broader perspective. So my research is mostly on, at this point, understanding who horses are without us and how we fit into their world, specifically from an affiliative perspective. How relationships are built and how trust is built and what that looks like in terms of how horses fit us into their spaces. Paradigms of training aside, like this is not about training, it's about looking at how actual relationships are built with horses, between horses as well as between horses and humans.
Very interesting. I always get this kind of nerdy shivers on my arms when I'm listening to what you say. Okay, Bonny disappeared for a moment. Bonny, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Press mute and I got rid of my camera. Hi everyone. It's lovely to see all these smiling faces and a few little animals joining us as well, which is always a special treat. I'm in Scotland. My name's Bonny Mealand. My main involvement with horses is through their feet. I'm an equine podiatrist. I've been trimming feet for about 20 years. And I've always enjoyed working with horses that are a bit more challenging, that could have the label of being problem or difficult. And this work has led me to being asked to work with feral ponies. So there's quite a lot of groups and herds of feral ponies, semi-feral, wild living. We can talk about descriptive names for them, but horses or ponies who can live horse lives. And there's quite a few in this area and throughout the whole of the UK. Regenerative grazing is a hugely growing area. And people get ponies thinking it's a great idea, which it is. If they're on the right numbers on the land, they do have incredible benefits to the ground, but then they can't handle them. So I specialize in working with those types of horses. So I'm the blurred line between what Emily's describing about building trust and learning about horses as horses to enable me to be able to work with them. So it's very minimal. It's just if there's veterinary intervention needed, hoof trimming or moving or whatever. Another part of the work that I've been doing is working with Mongolian wild horses. There's a zoo not too far from me, and I've been working with them very successfully over a few years. When I first started working with them, they could only be darted. and now we can handle all of them. But we've created a new method, and it's all horse-led. The work is all horse-led. So there's not a training program. Training certainly comes into it, but what it's all about is building trust. And to build trust, you have to be able to have an idea of what the horses are trying to communicate to you, and then work with that, with the ultimate goal of hopefully being able to interact when needed. So it's really hard to describe work and what we do. And I'm lucky enough to have met Katarina and Emily, who work in similar yet different fields. And there are so many crossovers. So these Learning Wild courses for us are like this culmination of experience, things that we've gone off individually to learn about horses, being horses, living horse lives, and just the incredible wealth of information that you can get from that. So I think I can speak for the others and say, you know, we're passionate about providing this opportunity for others because it's life-changing. So I think I've said enough. Look forward to questions, asking more. Oh,
Thank you, Bonny.
I don't know why I keep turning my video off. Sorry.
Lovisa, a few words from you.
Yes, my name is Louise Cooley and I live in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm also obviously an animal nerd, but I'm coming from a slightly different direction. I've mostly been working with carnivores, mostly wolves. Currently, I'm working at Skansen in Stockholm as a zookeeper, and I'm mostly working now with Nordic animals. I'm working with seals and otters mostly now, which is really fun. But tonight I'm having a shift where we are expecting some lambs, so I might be running back and forth a bit to see how the lamb business is going. So we'll see. But for me, learning wild is really interesting because it's sort of perspective on not only the horse's welfare but also human welfare, and a sort of perspective on coexistence in general. And for me also, of course, the carnivore perspective is really interesting because we have such a hard time coexisting with carnivores. And then seeing that from a horse's perspective, how do they coexist with them? And societies where it's more common to kind of accept them in their daily lives, how does that work? So I see learning wild as a concept from like very many interesting perceptions. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Thank you. It just when I was listening to you, I was reminded by an experience I had like yesterday. I live on the outskirts of the biggest like forest in Poland. It's a very old forest, and we have like different animals here, wolves as well, and they've been seen around my village like a few days ago even, and I saw a family of how do you call it, moose or elk? I mean the big animal with the like I think the Polish I don't know, European probably species name is a moose maybe. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's
so
British English, American. Yeah.
They do coexist then, really. Yes, that you can meet them just walking around. Yeah. So we are here to talk about learning wild and to introduce you. Or some of you will be joining us in different locations, and I was wondering if maybe any of you wants to say hi or a few words from yourselves, you know, if you feel like introducing yourself or maybe sharing something that popped up from the introductions, then now it's the time. It's not, you know, obligatory, but if you feel like talking to us for a moment, then you're welcome. I'll just wait a few moments. I know it's not always easy for people to just to speak up, but who knows, maybe somebody. maybe later.
Well, Marta, we can throw out a question because we have talked about what we think learning wild is for us, or we think what it is for us. So when you're
Yeah.
listening to us, what is in your mind about learning wild? Why are you here today? And are you interested in joining understanding the course? What is learning wild to you?
Yeah, what do you hope to, yeah,
any
learning wild to
reflections
be?
or questions? Because otherwise we are super good at talking all the time. So that's not a problem. I'm happy to share.
Mm.
Okay, I can add something because I haven't. I'm partly like a host here, but I feel like a participant as well. And what you haven't mentioned and what is a learning wild for me is also this connection to nature in different forms, not only like animals around us, but I feel that learning wild will be also about joining some kind of world and environment which doesn't work according to our rules, our human rules. It would not be like visiting horses in a yard or a, paddock, but it will be going out there to a kind of different side of things, I feel. And this is also something which is very exciting for me, and with this comes like the unpredictability of the weather, of the conditions, if it's wet or windy or I don't know, sunny, or there are mosquitoes. All this I think it's also a part of the wild experience. Is it so for you too?
Yeah, and I know, Marta, you mentioned somewhere like many people have like this notion about wild as some kind of romantic thing. Like we romanticize how it is to be wild and free. Like,
Yes.
but there are mosquitoes and there are shortage of food, and there are heat, and there is cold winters and
Predators.
Predators. Yeah.
predators, yeah, and injuries and all these things. So I think there, when we talk about equine welfare, our concept though we need also to take care of the feral horses because we think they cannot really manage on their own. So part of why we take people out into these learning wild experiences to see how horses actually manage and thrive and can take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that learning wild is learning about horses mostly, or horses and
Humans.
and humans? Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of my catch, and what I contribute with to this is talking about the human lens, how we come from different backgrounds and cultures and what we have learned before. And we take that with us when we go out and also watch horses living more feral. And we have these ideas and conceptions and constructs in our minds that this is what a horse is supposed to be and need and show up as. And then we need to kind of teach ourselves to take away these preconceived notions and start to observe again and be more free and not just look for what we already know or think we know about horses, but actually kind of clear our minds and watch, observe.
So
We do a lot of observations.
So this is like taking a step back from what we know, from what we expect, from what we've been used to.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've mentioned that wild can be a kind of romantic idea, and I agree that it can. But I was thinking about to ask Bonny, do you think that wild or feral horses are they in any way romantic, or in any way that would maybe if somebody's hungry for having the romantic idea of wild, would this experience kind of meet the expectation in any way?
Wow, that's a big question. Yeah, everybody's perception of wild is different. I think to generalize wildness, I mean, if it quite often has a negative connotation, you know, in the horse world, it can often be, you know, they're wild, so they're untrainable or unhandleable, which can be seen as a bad thing. So I think we've talked a lot about the different labels that we give to these horses or equines. So free living, wild, feral, semi-feral, but basically at the heart of every group that we choose to go and observe and occasionally interact with is horses that are able to lead horse lives. And I think you can't help but be around that and be touched. I mean, it's the most incredible experience to watch the social interactions, the cohesiveness of the relationships between the horses, the gentleness, the politeness. So in that way, absolutely, people will have their romantic box ticked because it's an absolutely lovely experience. You know, you can occasionally see another side of it, but to be honest, most of the groups that we go to are quite stable groups. So there's not a lot of conflict, or the conflict that you see is so minimal that it's just a twitch of an ear or a dirty look or something like that. And that in itself is so valuable. You know, when you have the opportunity to go out and put yourself in the environment that horses are living in, wherever it might be. I mean, we go to some pretty diverse places and every group is different. But with every group that are allowed to just form social bonds, be together over long periods of time, spend their days as they choose to, you can see this blueprint of what a horse is or what an equine is. And for me, when I first experienced that, I went and studied in Spain and still do study in Spain with Lucy Rees whenever I get the opportunity. It blew my mind. You know, I've worked with a lot of horses in a lot of places for a lot of years, and I had never seen anything like it. And again, this is my passion to just sort of put in front of people. This is actually the true essence of a horse. This is how they choose to live their lives. This is how they behave. And then when you get into the ethology, you have context for the behavior. So I think any of us who want to work with horses in any way, it's like this missing piece of the puzzle. It's like we're taught about horses, you know, you go on a course, you go to evolution. Yeah, horses have evolved over 56 million years from a forest dwelling small dog-like creature to the horse of today. Moving on. And there's this work of information in that, in how they've evolved, what, like their bodies and their behaviors are an expression of this evolutionary process. So this is really important for us to understand. And of course, we've come from this other direction, us as a species. We've put our cultural expectations onto horses of war, industrial work, you know, all of this type of stuff, which has shaped the horse world of today. But it doesn't actually have very much to do with what a horse is, who a horse is. So to understand this part, like who a horse is, how they choose to live their lives, to then apply it into the domestic horse world or wherever, however you work with horses or equines, it's so helpful. And this is my work. You know, I've just spent a lot of time observing horses. I do my best to interpret the behavior that I'm seeing, you know, which I know is like 2% of what they're actually communicating, but I'm doing my best. And the results that I've had have just been phenomenal. You know, they've blown my mind, they've blown everyone else's mind, because as soon as you start to behave to them, around them or with them in a way that makes sense to them, then suddenly you can start this peaceful coexistence. You can start this sharing of space in a way that is really appropriate for their species, cohesive, quiet, calm, gentle, all of these things. So I hope that answers the sort of the question about wild. But to me, wild wild is about peace and tranquility and cleverness, you know, how they can move through their landscapes. Their problem solving abilities are absolutely phenomenal, because that, you know, they are in touch with every part of their body. They know how to move in certain places. And so just seeing stuff like that really changes the bar on what your idea of a horse can be. And then, like I say, the really powerful thing about learning wild, it's an amazing experience, you know, because we go to such amazing, lovely places and we meet fascinating people as well as seeing the horses. But the knowledge that you have from that, when you then take it home and apply it in whatever way you do, that's where you see the really big changes.
Mm. Would you say that this is something that actually has a chance to change how we perceive equine welfare? Like,
yeah,
Yes.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I want to add to
questions,
you, Bonnie, because what you bring up is, we talked about this yesterday, Marta and Emily, the agency of the horse. When they are allowed to live their own lives, make decisions, be social, form the social groups that they want, not that we have put together for them, we can actually see almost kind of another animal than what we are used to seeing if we only see horses in stables. So my thinking is always like, most people who work with horses actually don't know what a horse is, because they are so far away from the context that they have evolved to live in, and they are not allowed to live according to themselves and their own nature. So
That's
when
my
we go
experience.
out and see them in the wild, they have this agency, and we can observe that and learn.
Yeah, that's my experience too, working with captive animals, is that all the behaviors almost that we know about or think we know are coming from captive animals, captive wild animals. And it doesn't really give a just picture of what they're actually like at all, because they don't have the agency to do that, to be themselves fully. So I can absolutely recognize that with the animals that I've worked with for a long time, that there are so many misconceptions and so many ideas about what they are like that is not actually true if they had their lives in their way.
and so many systems are built upon this. Yeah, so many, you know, the ways we perceive welfare, the ways we train them, the ways we communicate to them. It's all based on this notion, and it reminds me of the way we see children. For example, we base our assumptions about children on the way children behave at school, at kindergarten. To me, this is very similar. It's like seeing them in captivity and seeing them wild. I mean, outside of systems, it's totally different. Yeah, so we kind of have this tendency, I think, as a species to put different persons into conditions which are not species, you know, proper, which are not actually which don't allow them to meet their needs, and we observe and we draw conclusions, and we kind of agrees to our beliefs, our preconceptions, and then we move on and we live like this.
Yeah, and I think if I can just jump in here for a second,
sure.
I think it's really important. I love what everybody said, because it's you know, people have a tendency to think about feral or wild horses as this thing over here, like it's something different than what we have in our backyard. Okay, that's great, that's a feral horse, that's whatever. That doesn't apply to me and my horse, because that's like my horse in my backyard. But I think what's really a key to all of this is again what everybody was saying about, okay, what is wild, feral? It's the same species that we're looking at. It's the same animal in its natural environment, or as natural as we can see it, performing natural behaviors in stable social situations, things in situations for which horses have evolved to live. And it's the same species in our backyard. So recognizing that we have done that separation. I love what Bonnie said about putting kind of cultural expectations, like taking taking a really hard look at those cultural expectations. And I like the term cultural because they are ingrained in our culture. Like it is in our artwork, it's in our stories, it's in our myths and mythology. And if we take a look at how we think about horses based on that context and that lens, and really start to look at that as a lens, and then separate it out and say, okay, this is the same horse. It is a horse. What are we doing that we can help our horse find better ways to integrate these, behavioral, psychological, physical welfare? It's all tied together. It's not just like physical's over here, psychological's over here. All of that welfare is tied together. It's just like with humans, you talk about the biopsychosocial model, where it's biological, it's genetic, it's psychological, it's also social and interaction with culture. Same thing with horses. So looking at who horses are without that kind of cultural context and that human influence of the domestic environment, we get a much better picture of the types of things that we're doing and the influences that we're having on horses and who they are and who they aren't within our domestic space.
It can be revolutionary. I think that many of when you mentioned culture, it's like, it's so strong, it's so solid in our minds, in how we perceive horses. Yes.
Yes.
All these different things that are put on them. And when you see statues in the cities, people sitting on horses, I mean, fairy tales, all this stuff. I mean, the picture of a horse, it's so distorted that when you say, oh, let's see the horse, how he is or how she is, the horsey horse. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. And even if we take a step even further back, we talk about different cultures, human cultures. We also have the human as a species. We are also an animal.
Yeah.
So we ourselves have very species-specific traits and things we do, like touching, for example. We are very focused on our hands and very noisy with our mouths. And we kind of forget that horses aren't like that. So just bringing people out into these environments and have them not go up and touch a horse and have this different experience of either just observing them, which could be a fantastic experience, as Bonnie was talking about, just being in their environment, meeting them on their terms, but also sometimes if they actually approach you, leaving it up to them and not being the one in charge, in control, in having these needs to give or caretake or fix or examine them if they're anything, just being there with them and respecting them as an equal, another species, and we are then also an animal, this human with our specific behaviors and needs and what we keep on doing.
I think that's important practice to be made by humans, because we are such a lonely species. I mean, we believe we are, out there on the top of everything, like the rulers of the world, and we, I think, tend to see the world as like servant to us, the other species. Yes, like when you like speak to children, okay, the cow gives you milk, the chickens give you eggs, the horse is for riding, the dog just takes care of so the thieves are away, the cat eats the mouse, everybody's serving you. And suddenly, meeting the animals there in the wild as if they don't serve you in any way, they don't have a purpose to just to give you pleasure or to be in your attraction, that can be shocking.
Yeah, and I think that you're really kind of hitting a home there, because especially for horses, who we think like, it really, again, in that cultural context, it's all about them serving us, whether it's transportation, agriculture, meat, food, whatever. Most of us only see horses in that context of them serving humans or our society in some way. So realizing that, oh my gosh, they can live without us, they can have full social lives without even any kind of, human influence whatsoever. And that, yeah, maybe horses weren't evolved just for human purposes. And it kind of, and again, it's sort of like taking a recognizing that lens, and how thick it is, how pervasive it is, but how unnecessary it is for us to recognize our role in their world as much as their role in ours, and really seeing that this can be a balance of two species within the context of the entire environment, which I think is one of the beautiful things about what we do. Is we're not just going to one place. We have multiple places where they're all horses, but here is this horse that has, you know, figured out how to live in this type of environment with this type of culture surrounding it. You know, the little mountain on Eriskay that is so vastly different than the Inch Marshes, which are also different than, you know, the mountaintops in Italy, where it's, you know, just a whole different kind of space. And seeing how horses have adapted problem solving, interacting with different prey species like Lovisa does, and realizing that we're all a part of a larger environment and ecosystem. Again, as you said, it's like, it's not just about them serving us, it's about us being a part of this larger space, which is, I think, a whole other realm of just being able to recognize our role in this rather than just thinking everybody serves us.
Would you say that this is what rewilding is? Like, that is something that, like, understanding our part in the bigger puzzle, not the stepping down from this, you know, highest seat possible and finding a new place for us? Is it this?
I mean, I feel like there is a certain amazement or magical feeling where you realize that there are so many other lives going on in the same space as your own, and with their own challenges and everything going on with them that has nothing to do with you. And for me, at least, that's a big source of inspiration, just knowing that life is going on around me without it being about me, sort of. So many different fates going on in different species and how they coexist, and so much happening. And it kind of cures, I guess, that feeling of human loneliness, I think, at least, knowing that there are others out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that they have their own lives and they're not just mirrors to us.
Like you said, that this is not about me. Like, I think we have either the tendency to see others as servants or as dangers, like with the wolves, I think. Yeah, wolves are not the servants, but they are out there to eat us.
Yeah.
To steal our chickens and, you know, just do all this.
Evil.
Yeah, the bad guys. Yes.
That's very common. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think in regards to the rewilding, it can be quite a contentious word as well. You know, it, again, means different things to different people. I think learning new ways about peaceful coexistence is one of the many things that you can get from these experiences. And I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time in Zimbabwe over the past couple of years, and I'm going to go there again this year and hopefully run a Learning Wild course there next year. And the place that I live, which is in the bush, is right on the edge of a national park. So there's the full range of like the biodiversity, the ecosystem's amazing. You've got elephants, you've got buffalo, lion, crocodiles, and a lot of zebras. So I was lucky enough to live in this place 25 years ago, and there weren't that many zebras there then. But over this period of time, the human population has expanded, and the species that can get on with people. So what's happened now is that you can go through the middle of the township and see zebra walking down the street. I've got the most brilliant video of a zebra walking up the steps to the doctor's surgery because there's some nice grass in front of the door. And the people are there, the people, I mean, there's a lot to it, obviously. The people, to them, it's just part of their life, their community there. The animals, these particular animals can just go in and be amongst them and feel completely safe. So it's really fascinating to look at that, because I think we always have this tendency to come in as cultural, species, whatever, or all of that, that we've got the answers, because we're always up in our heads, you know, this sort of like, we can work it out and we can find the answers, and this is how we do it. But actually, learning wild is a very somatic experience, in that you're very much, you can't observe these animals or be around these animals without just settling. You know, you can't be busy, and you're so very often so drawn into what's happening, into this, you know, this soap opera of whatever might be going on, even if it's just sort of peaceful grazing or the interaction between a mother and foal. You're completely present with that. And these opportunities to learn, you know, nobody could come up with this stuff. And yet these animals, and, you know, the zebras and the humans have come up with it. And there's a successful model of wild animals that can live with people in a way that is successful. So that's also part of it. It's sort of getting out of our preconceived ideas and just being part of the experience. And that is a huge part of each group. Like every place we go to is different, and every group is different. You have so many different people with so many different interests, that the quality and the context and the different levels of information and expertise just take the conversations to a completely different place. But just that opportunity to sit back, to observe, and then to talk later and to go through things, you start to come up with stuff that would never have occurred to you. Well, certainly that's happened to me. It's like things I would never have thought of. You see these horses suddenly just doing, and that information is offered. So learning wild experiences is maybe a fuller title, because it's a real experience. You learn so much, then it's just such an amazing experience to be part of.
And I want to insert there, Bonnie, because it's an immersion. The experience of coming to a learning wild experience is you become immersed in this experience. You are in the context of where these horses live, and in the culture, human culture also around it. Like on RSK, for example, they have a very long tradition working with horses. So you become so fully there, so it also helps you see it from other perspectives. And I think about rewilding as it's mostly about rewilding ourselves. We are not in learning wild. We're not working on rewilding horses, for example. We do have many people working with conservation, and we have beautiful dialogues and discussions with people. But rewilding yourself, like opening your heart, and Lovisa talked about this, how you connect with nature, how you suddenly become nature and become part of what you are seeing. So it's a little bit like shedding a lot of layers and becoming more present and more aware, and then for more open to seeing horses differently. And then all these questions comes, of course, because most of us have a background somehow with horses. And then you start to like, but now I see the horses do this, and what if I did, and what if I helped my horses do this at home? And all these ideas comes from what you see. And sometimes it is as easy as Bonnie says, they're only grazing, but so much is happening because they're allowed to live. So this is also another perspective of what rewilding could be.
I was thinking when you were talking that we used to have, probably we still have in the world, an event called like safari, when people go into the wilderness and they observe animals. And this is like an event of, I mean, it doesn't ring like learning wild experience at all, because you model, I think you as facilitators of this event, you model an approach in which you, it sounds very humble. You come to visit, you don't come as a master of the world being taken on a tour and, watch your, dominions, but you come as a humble visitor, as somebody who just, you knock gently on the door and say, hey, can I be here? and this comes from you, I guess. Yes, because many people watch animals, and it's not always done this way.
Yeah, I think that part of it is that, you know, we're not putting people in a cage, bringing them out and like showing them and then bringing them back in. You have to bring your muck boots. You have to bring your midge nets, especially in Scotland. And so you're part of working, like physically moving through that environment, getting to know the environment in a way that, you know, gets you kind of in touch with what the horses live with. We're not standing from a distance taking photographs. We're walking in it with them. And there's a level of vulnerability here that it requires a little bit more like work, a little bit more openness. You have to be willing to physically do things. Nobody's going to hold your hand through this process. And a lot of times we end up with the horses, there's no halters, there's no lead ropes, there's no fences. And all of a sudden, a lot of people haven't actually walked into their pasture with their horses and just spent time with their horses without having some sort of need to control it. And so just that into itself can sort of bring this whole other level of understanding that includes that kind of vulnerability. And all of us, you know, as Marta, as you mentioned earlier, you know, we're so used to the horses serving us, and most of us, you know, are so used to the horses, you know, wanting to be with us, or we think they want to be with us, and us controlling that arrangement, and all of a sudden we have no control over it. And here we are with horses who we have no control over, and that can bring up a lot of interesting discussions about what that means for us, what that means for the horses, and how we can move forward with that with the horses in our own lives by taking a new perspective.
Mm-hmm. That seems like, again, like you know, like putting the things upside down a little bit, yes, for the people there. And somehow you say that this is a pleasurable experience for most of them. So does it mean that this is the right time to do such things, that we actually have this need to belong out there in the wilderness, in nature, with the others, with the other fishes, and now it's the right moment to do it?
Can I address some of the comments and questions that have been put in the chat? So thanks to people who are just talking in there. I think the first one was Carla, just saying that she's mainly working with domestic horses, and I hope just from the discussion so far you've seen how close what we're taking people out to experience are. You know, we're looking at them as a species, as an animal able to exhibit the natural behavior of the species, and how relevant that is for domestic horses. So yeah, thanks for putting that comment in, because to me that's a really big part of this. I think there's lots of, like I was saying about the peaceful coexistence, that's a real inspiration. But for me, my work is very practical. I'm a very practical person. It's about what can we do with this stuff? How can we apply it into, you know, whatever area we work in, to the benefit of horses to the best of our ability, without being idealistic and, you know, just very grounded and realistic. I think it was Pauline who said that she couldn't get out just yet and actually physically experience these things yet. Well, Pauline, I've just spent a few weeks traveling around with Emily and discovered that you always have to film everything. When you spend time with a research scientist, there's 5 different cameras at different angles. So hopefully we'll start putting stuff together and we can start sharing that, because some of these environments are really challenging. Even if you're physically able, they can be quite a big deal. So we'd love to find ways to be able to share that as well, you know, and even if it's just little snippets and not necessarily even any talking or context to go with it, maybe just a description of where we are and what's happening. So yeah, hopefully we can share that in that way, because it is a beautiful experience. I mean, who doesn't want to watch horses? I think the final one was Elke, and I'm not sure if I've got the pronunciation right, talking about, was it Harmony with Horses, which, I mean, that's just a brilliant title. Sorry, if I sit still long enough, that will always appear. So yeah,
There's a wild animal with you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're doing is really lovely. And I think I just maybe, you use the word natural there. And I think that's a really important word to get to pin down in terms of description. You know, what does that mean? Because we all know about natural horsemanship, and so many products are sold as natural, which, you know, has this idea behind it that it's good. But what does that really mean? You know, this is what we're trying to put in, give people the opportunity to learn for themselves, because I often use the word natural and normal together, because natural can mean a completely different thing for different people. So being natural, you know, learning about what that is, getting a real, I mean, we do quite a lot of pinning down on definitions, you know, what does that word really mean, and what's gone into that, so that we're not just making assumptions and working from that. So yeah, really interesting what you put there. Thanks so much. And does anyone else have any questions? I mean, we've talked quite a lot, and hopefully said some stuff. You have said some stuff that's useful to people, and it would be lovely to hear from you guys, even if it's just a comment. But yeah, if you have questions, I reckon now's a good time. Do you agree?
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
I just to hit it home with Bonnie, what Bonnie just said, we do talk a lot about feral horses and what's going on in that environment, and that's great, but part of this is bringing it home. And a lot of the conversations we have when we're out there have a lot to do with how we can bring all of this back to our own spaces in our own lives and our own horses, and with practical applications. No, we can't all let our horses out on, 75, 80, 100,000 acres. We have to find ways to really help incorporate some of this into our own lives. And we have those discussions while we're out there, in terms of what can we take away from this? Well, how can we use this? How can we make a difference back at home?
Yeah. I think it's the perfect time for questions, because it's 10 to 8 in our part of the world. And I hope that some questions will appear. Maybe we've said some disturbing stuff and you want to ask. If you don't like talking, you can also write in the chat.
Yeah. So does this sound interesting to you? Would you like to come along and join us for a course, Learning Wild somewhere?
Oh, look at Lovisa. She's with the sheep. So cute.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Katarina, because if we've said between us quite a few times, we think we're doing the courses we'd want to do, that we'd want to go on, but we're not sure if everybody else wants to. But I mean, certainly from the feedback we've had from people that come is that people love that. But yeah, if there's something missing or something that would enhance the experience, or particular questions or particular places you want to go, that would be really valuable for us to hear about, I think.
Okay, Carla says that she would love to watch wild horses. I will read out. I have seen some a long time ago in Nevada and Washington, but not since. I started learning more about horses. Okay, so it seems that there are more people that want to watch wild horses. And it seems that Elki in Estonia, that, okay, she's giving us her website name or Facebook name.
Actually, this is part of what we also can offer, because we are an international group of people working together. So you will find like-minded people and have these beautiful discussions about things. That's also part what you can bring home, a wider network of people interested in the same things as you are.
It sounds especially exciting to me, like Estonia and Latvia. These are like my
neighbors.
Neighboring areas, let's say.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay,
And
the guys
Laura,
are.
we have talked about having something similar in Latvia, because you also have conic courses in Latvia.
Yeah, Latvia speaking, yes, we have conic horses in quite a few places, and they're also, of course, being used for riding. And we are currently trying to, with Salva, who is also present here, we are trying to figure out how it's really working for them, because there are limited space for the horses, and the young ones somehow mysteriously disappear. So it's a harsh reality for them. But yeah, there are places you can really see them almost wild, almost feral. They're actively avoiding the humans, like any normal horse would do. So you can now watch what a real horse looks like, behaves like. So you're invited.
Great.
to watch the semi-wilds.
And you're bringing up something important, Laura, because if horses weren't used to people, they would stay away from us like any wild animal actually do, which is an interesting perspective, because it goes against this idea that horses love us. They're born to love us and be our partners and all this.
Because we made them, right?
Yeah.
They have to love us because we made them.
We feed them and
we're keeping them alive. So
yeah. Probably it all depends, because the ponies, the conics which live in the reservation we are going to in Poland, they live at the very big lake. It's a forest near the lake, and many people who are sailing on this lake, they've met the conics, and the conics know that there are places where the boats are coming. Of course, this is not legal to park the boat there, but people do it anyway. And you can find many photos of people being attacked, for food or for different things by feral conics. So once they meet people and they kind of figure out what people can be for, they make use of it.
Yeah, we are a resource. I want to
Yeah.
address, because Joshua brings up about conic horses in UK, and the ones we are visiting in Inch Marshes, they are conics. But there are also other places. We have been, Emily and I was visiting at Wick and Fen, for example. There are quite a few places in UK with conic horses.
Yeah, whereabouts are you, Joshua, if you want to say, because we might know somewhere close by.
Hello.
Hiya.
Yeah, I'm in Kent, and I was told there were conic horses in an area called the Bleen, which is a very large wooded area, and it's also, there's another woodland next door to it, which is where a significant rewilding project is happening.
I haven't heard of that one, but yeah, I mean, usually it's organisations who take these ponies. So Wick and Fen is the National Trust, the Conics at Inch Marsh is their RSP. So very often it's an actual regenerative grazing project or rewilding or whatever you want to call it. So do you know who runs it? Is it?
It's a partnership between Kent Wildlife Trust and what's the other place called? I think it's called Wildwood, the Wildwood Trust. And they also have European bison there as well.
So it's fenced.
Well, yeah, it is ultimately.
Not allowed to have them roaming around, sadly. Okay, so how big is it? Do you know the place?
In terms of hectares, I mean, it took me several hours to walk from one end to the other.
Okay.
So it's big. it is pretty
like,
big.
It doesn't sound like the sort of place you expect to come across in Kent.
No, this is why I wanted to bring it up, because it is unusual for the southeast. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning it. I'll ask around because it sounds intriguing, particularly if they're going with bison and other large herbivores, looking at the mixed species grazing, which is sort of the step that everybody wants to take, but with all the rules and regulations in the UK, it's obviously, it's a bit of a nightmare and very difficult. So interesting. Yeah. Does it have a name, the place? Did you say it's, I didn't catch the name.
Let me see.
Maybe you could put it in the chat, then we could make, a
Yeah,
name.
I'll put it in the chat, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, we're still waiting for your questions, comments, and reflections. Oh, Marius wrote to us from Poland. I work in nature reserve at Puck Bay, North Poland. So this is at the seaside. We use herd of conics for grazing to keep seaside meadow in the right conditions. Great, I didn't know that we have such things in Poland. I can't wait to talk to you, Marius, when we meet in Learning Wild. Great.
And this is actually something we haven't talked much about today, how horses fill this new role of keeping landscapes in a better balance. Like they become a part of ecology again. They have been removed from that and only kept in horse pastures in most countries. But then again, introducing them actually changes the environment, and that's a great topic on its own. And you can talk, we can talk about that for hours, and very interesting. Which is actually why conics has been so popularly spread all over the place by now, because they do great in many different diverse environments.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe some final comments from you guys. Emily, Katarina, Bonny, Lovisa, do you want to say some, summing up sentences, last word? No.
Yeah. I think I'd like to say thanks to everybody for turning up. And if there's any feedback, then just message us, the Learning Wild page. You can put all the stuff in the chat for how to contact us. And yeah, I mean, talking about peaceful coexistence, yeah, cat, just do what the cat wants and everything's okay.
Is it this cat that you brought from Africa, Bonny? Because once you were in Zimbabwe, I remember you showing us a little kitten. Is it the one?
No, I looked at the kitten's back, and it would cost £2,000 each. So I asked around and found a new home and sponsored them so the people wouldn't have the cost of them. But yeah, it was too terrifying to do that. Plus, I don't know how he would have. How he would.
He doesn't look so welcoming.
Yes.
I too want to.
Thanks for putting.
I too want to say thank you to all of you who has been here tonight. And as Bonny says, we're happy to answer any kind of questions you have or reflections. Or we want to make these courses for you. It's about you and your experiences on them. So the more we know about what you're looking for, and the easier it gets for us, so obviously. So please contact us.
Katarina, would you put some contact details in the chat while we are saying goodbyes?
For us, you mean, or for?
For the viewers, for
Yeah,
the
there is a
participants.
Learning Wild page on Facebook. So if you haven't gone to it yet, do, and we communicate a lot via it. And you can put all questions and reflections and share whatever. We're trying to also kind of build a community around this. So
yep,
you're all very welcome.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I'm just, all I could do is echo Katarina and Bonnie. We all love this stuff. We are very passionate about it, and we're always really excited to just share it with whoever wants to be there. And every single time, I don't care how many times I go out to these different places with horses, there's always something to learn and new things to discuss. It's kind of this, it's magical in a different way, because it really kind of opens up just new dialogue every single time.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, we can promise you many interesting and very nerdy discussions.
Very nerdy. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, nerdy would be another word again. I mean, next to wild and free, the nerdy sure is the word that would pop up
And
frequently. Passion.
Mm.
Yes. Thank you all very much for coming tonight, and I hope to see some of you soon. Yeah, just see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.